Hello YouTube and welcome back to the conservatory. I've just checked my channel and I'm really surprised to see that I've now got 122 subscribers. I'm really surprised by that. It's about 120 more than I ever expected to get. So if you have subscribed, thank you very much for subscribing, and also to all those who have sent me messages on Facebook or even contacted me directly. Thanks ever so much for all your comments. Obviously I do try and answer them all. And yeah, they've all been really positive so far, so that's really nice to see, so thank you for that. Anyway, today is a good day because at long last we're going to start reassembling the bike. So as you can see, I've found another little inspection cover to put on this cover, but I am still thinking about replacing the cover overall. Hopefully I can find a better one. Not too keen on all this scuffing down here. So here's the engine, let's go and get the frame. And I have to say I'm really impressed with how well this frame's come up. I just used the Screwfix no nonsense degreaser and it's done a brilliant job. It really is good, easy to use, just apply it neat. There are a few areas sort of around here where you had the chain loop, which is always a pig to get off, where I had to resort to a little bit of neat petrol, but otherwise the frame has come up really well. In fact, one thing I'm really impressed with, I don't know if I can get you to see them, but the engine mounting plates and bolts here, they've come up really well. I mean, the plating on these bolts and the actual plates themselves hardly seems to have deteriorated, which is fantastic considering it's a 30-odd-year-old frame. So yeah, good old Honda quality. Now, let's see if in true Haynes fashion, refitting or reassembly is indeed the reverse of disassembly. Cool, well that's sort of got it in place. So, I'm going to start with the top rear engine mount because that's the easiest one to get in. It's always a way that once you've got one mount in, the rest tend to follow a bit easier. I've also got a bit of LM grease here, and I'm just going to put a very light coating on the bolts themselves, just to help resist the corrosion and make it disassembly easier in the future. Very thin skim. Don't go blathering it on. You can use copper grease. I'm not really a big fan of copper grease though. So here we go. Now, like I said, this first bolt is going to take a little bit of jiggling around, and the spacer. Spacer's putting up a bit of a fight, so what I might do is get this bolt in, and just to align everything. See what's happened. Better. We've got trapped under the front engine mount. Go. That's that in. And of course I've put the bolts in the wrong way round. So I'm going to take that out and redo that, but let's get this bottom one in. And you can see it's the wrong way around because the thread is protruding out. So let's try again with the bottom, get that one in, and we'll redo the top. In just a little bit of grease. Now try and keep the grease off the actual threads because we're going to be torquing these up to the manual specs. But of course if you put grease on the threads, it will actually give a false reading and you'll end up over tightening things. And that's that one through. So the plan is I'm going to put the bolts in, not torque them up until the swing arm's in, and then once the swing arm's in and all the bolts are in, we'll go around and torque everything up to the correct specifications. So let's redo this. There, that's better. Now the bolt head is flush with the frame. Onto the front engine mounts. So, as I said, I'm reusing the ones that came with the crash bungs. And again, just a little bit of grease on there, just to make life easier in the future. And of course what tends to happen is you get corrosion between the aluminium and the steel of the bolts, so the grease does help prevent that. This is the other side. And we know that because this was the longer one, because it has to accommodate the radiator clamp or radiator hose clamp. Which I've now put down somewhere. And this is what always happens when you're working on bikes. You pick something up, put it down, and never find it again. And I'm starting with the bolts on the left hand side because obviously we've got the little spacer shims to put in on the right hand side. As I said, I'm just doing them tight but not up to full tightness just yet. And there's our little spacers. As usual. Something isn't quite right, and I know what it is. I did, after all that, have it the right way around in the first place. Unfortunately, this is what happens. You kind of forget over time what went wrong and how and exactly why. But the nice thing is, if something doesn't look right, it generally isn't, and you can soon see what you've done wrong. Now, I'm going to open the door a bit. It's getting a bit warm in here. this little one is always the trickiest one. Thank heavens Honda put those little teardrop shaped washers in. Okay, just nip the rear ones up a bit. And like I said, I'm only putting them in too loosely because I don't want to squeeze the frame too much until we've got the swing arm in. There you go. One more thing to add is repainted radiator support clamps. These are handed, so when you put them in, the welded on nut goes on the inside, the bolt comes through from the outside of the frame. Again, I'm only going to do these up loosely because I do want them to be able to pivot until we actually get the radiator in, and then I can clamp them down. Enough. See, there's just a little bit of movement in there, so we can align it all up with the radiator when I come to fit it. Cool, well that's us finished at the front of the bike. Now we can move on to the swing arm. So as you can see, swing arms had the chain slider all cleaned up and refitted, and the little guide block at the top, and I just want to add some fresh grease to the roller bearings or the needle bearing, and also put a little bit of grease on this spacer. In fact, I've got another one which is cleaner, so we will just grease this up. And then I want to add some fresh grease around the rollers. So really you need to sort of put it on your finger and push it into the actual bearing itself. Try and push the grease home. Now there's conventional roller bearings on the other side, and you can't really get into those to add any more grease. So they do feel pretty good actually. Okay. And now this is the bit where it all gets a little bit fiddly, and in my opinion a little bit overly complicated thanks to Honda, but here we go. Does help you put it in the right side. So classic example, if something doesn't slide straight in, you know you're doing something wrong. Well, I've got the swing on. The other thing you may notice is on the chain guard, or the shark's fin, I decided to mill a few slots in it just to make it all look a little bit more racy. So here's the swing arm adjuster. Put that in very, very loosely until it just shows through on the inside frame. You can see that's just flush with the frame now. Swing arm spindle. Again, a nice liberal coating of grease, but trying to avoid getting it all over the threads. We'll just rest that in there. Now slide it home and make sure that engages properly in the adjuster. Then we can take the actual swing arm pivot nut and just put that on the other side, finger tight for the time being. Too tight on that, because now we need to adjust this end. So according to the manual, and I've written all my torque references up on the whiteboard, this swing arm adjuster, we need to tighten that up to 15 Newton meters. So get the little torque wrench out. As you can see, I've got the small one for the finer stuff and the big one for the heavier stuff. I'm just going to set that to 15 Newton meters. 10, 12, 14, 15. And 17mm socket, and a funny little welded up tool that we made when we dismantled everything. And all the while I'm tightening up this side, I'm just going to gradually ease up the main nut on the other side. And you can feel that starting to engage with the bearings in the swing arm. And there it is, 15 Newton meters. Now I'm going to zoom you in for the next bit because we're going to actually fit the locking nut. So this is the locking nut. Now the procedure, according to Honda, is to use this special castellated tool, and as I said, it does come with a shaft that sticks out about 50 millimeters, and that's what the torque setting is designed for. The problem is I don't have that. And I've been looking on various forums, and most people are actually saying that the whole thing is a bit over the top, and you can get away with using this and not worrying too much about the torque. So the actual adjuster nut needs to be done up to 65 Newton meters. So I'm going to need the bigger torque wrench for that. I'm going to set that to 65. In fact, I'm going to set it up to 70, because obviously without that extra leverage we are actually going to be tightening it less than you would do with the leverage. And then the other thing I'm going to do is take a permanent marker, and I'm just going to draw a line across here with the permanent marker, and that way we can see if the nut has actually moved. And obviously once it's all torqued up we can clean it all off afterwards. So let's take our adjusting nut. Or adjusting ring, really. There it is, 70 Newton meters. And I put my ruler across there. It hasn't actually moved at all while we tightened it up. So I think that's a lot easier than doing it the Honda way. Right, we'll zoom you back out. Now we'll do up the main nut. That has to go up to 90 Newton meters, so quite high. But at the same time, you've got to hold this to stop it from turning. Spanner. And my 27mm socket. swing arm in. Now we can start installing the linkage. So I've already pre-greased the linkage. As you can see, it's all been greased, it's been sprayed up, and we've gone for a bit of blingy gold on the finish of this one, purely because I ran out of silver paint, to be honest. So when you install these, there is a little symbol just here that shows you the correct direction to put it up. So that goes up, so the longer arm secures to the frame, this one goes in the centre, and your shock bolts on there. It would appear I've put the wrong spacer in there, so I'm going to have to stop the video while I pop out in the garage and go and get the correct spacer. So bear with me a bit and we'll be back shortly. Okay, so I've gone and had a little word with myself. I really should prepare a little bit better before I start pressing record. Anyway, here's our linkage again, now with the correct spacer fitted. So what I'm going to do is, given that this bolt here was actually seized on both swing arms, I am going to use a bit of copper grease on this one. Now I know it's going to have a bit of a detrimental effect on the torquing, but I think that's better than not being able to get the bolt out in the future. The one thing with copper grease is so many people seem to put way too much on, and literally that is all you need. Just a very, very thin smear, and you don't even have to go all the way around, because as you tighten the bolt up, obviously the threads are going to be in contact with each other, and they are going to distribute that quite nicely. So let's get it in. I've also bought myself a new 8mm Allen socket. There we are, that's in. Again, just loose at the moment, and we'll tighten and torque everything up a bit later on, once I've got everything in place. There's our linkage in. And finally, our rebuilt shock. So I did actually strip this down, completely rebuild it, filled it with some fresh oil and recharged it, pumped it back up again. In case you're wondering what the inside of a shock looks like, here's a photo. I didn't record it purely because, as you can see from the photo, not only are there loads of shims that have to come out and go back in the right order, but some of them are actually dished and they've got to go up the right way around. And given my propensity for getting myself all confused and fuddled about stuff, I figured it was probably best not to record it and just do it. So of those jobs where you need about 3 hands, unfortunately. That in. See when I've assembled the shock, I didn't quite get this straight, so hopefully quick tweak with a spare bolt. I'm going to slacken off the preload a little bit that I've applied. It seems to be a bit too long. And sometimes you do just need to resort to the rubber hammer just to line things up. There we go, we're in. Now, one thing I said, we're going to go around and torque up all these nuts and bolts at the end. The one we're going to leave loose is this one, and that's because it is just a plain bush in this end of the shock. And obviously you've got roller bearings everywhere else. So what you need to do is leave this loose, and then when the bike is fully assembled and sat under its own weight, that's when you can tighten this one up. Otherwise you lock the bush in place and it's permanently twisted when the bike is sat on its own weight. So I'll make a note on the whiteboard to remind me to do that at a later date. But yeah, that one stays just finger tight for the time being. Okay, well, everything's in. Let's get torquing everything up. So I need my 14mm socket. And of course our 8mm Allen driver. And we'll start off. So all of these need to be done up to 55 Newton meters. So let's set this. In fact, I'm going to use the big torque wrench. Let's start at the bottom. our way down. So start with this one down here. Now you may be wondering about the linkage in the middle here, and I did actually torque that up before we started because I knew you wouldn't be able to get access to it once it was in place. Should have mentioned that before I fitted it, but hopefully you'll watch all this before you start yourself. Right, so that's them done. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, and we'll come back to this one a bit later on. I am just going to nip it up a little bit. And all that leaves us to do now is all the engine bolts, and they all need to be 40 Newton meters. So I think I can revert back to the small wrench for that. Okay. So start with the front. Now really you should actually torque up the nut and not the bolt, but I don't think I'm going to get a torque wrench in on these ones. There he is. of course these are a pain because they're 14 both ends. So again, I'm going to have to torque up the bolt rather than the nut, which is not ideal. Okay, so that should be all 6 of those done. I'm just going to come back round and check the front ones. Right. Well, starting to look a bit more like a bike again. We're going to leave it there. So that's it for today's video, and in the next video I'll be looking at fitting the head bearings and refitting the headstock and hopefully refitting the forks. So hope you enjoyed it. Sorry for the little cock up on my front for getting the bolts. I will try to be a bit more organised in the next one. See you then, thanks.